Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.
Wendy's new Cajun chicken sandwich. So spicy, it's pica.
You or someone you know looking for a job? Well, Sentinel Security is hiring and they're offering starting pay between $10 to $15 an hour. And they'll train you too. Email them today that you're interested at sentinelsolutionsguam@gmail.com. Sentinel Security, the Guam's most reliable security solution for your home and your business. Doesn't this look oh so good? Say hello to the coolest party in your hands. Cold Stone Guam's birthday cake Oreo cookie ice cream taco. They took everything you love, birthday cake Oreo cookie ice cream, rainbow sprinkles, rich chocolate, and a crispy waffle taco shell and turned it into the ultimate summertime celebration. This signature creation won't be around forever, so grab yours while it lasts. Visit Cold Stone at their GPO or Micronesia Mall locations today. Cold Stone Creamery, the ultimate ice cream experience.
Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good evening, my dear friends. It is, 8:14 p.m., very close to my bedtime. I should be... Actually, my phone just went into sleeper mode at 8:14 p.m. It's set that way every night. So I am working overtime for you. Just kidding. I do this because I love it. It is 8:14 p.m. on Thursday, July 17, 2025. Happy birthday to a very old friend of mine from long ago, but I remember that his birthday is July 17, David Chrysostomo. Now, so there was a choice tonight on what I was going to cover, and the choices were between. So recently, there's an unsealed federal search warrant. I think it's warrant number MJ 24-00130. It's a search warrant that was issued and executed last year. It was in 2024. I think it was in September, if I'm not mistaken. And this search warrant, according to this search warrant application, U.S. Postal Inspection Service task force agents working with Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency intercepted a mail parcel. And when you hear the word mail parcel, you're thinking an envelope, right? Or maybe a little box or something. There is a picture of, you know, those white mail boxes, the ones where they carry like all of the packs or the piles and piles of mail. This gigantic mailbox filled, spilling over with packages of meth. 32 pounds of meth found in one package. And I looked at that search warrant and I weighed it against the Tenorio Corruption Case. And I came back to the Tenorio Corruption Case. This is the largest political corruption case in the history of the island. And while, yes, there are drug traffickers who are poisoning the bodies of people, the corrupt of this island have been poisoning the heart of this island for decades. And that needs to stop. Because when we stop that, and when we instill values into the society like honesty, respect, integrity, then things like drug abuse will go away as well. And we wouldn't need drug traffickers wouldn't have a business to run. It's as simple as that. Now, I was thinking about it earlier tonight, and I thought, and I was talking with a couple of friends, and I thought, I have no concept of what $1.9 million is. I've never seen that much money in my life. I don't even know what to do with it. If you gave me $1.9 million right now, I would probably blow it on really stupid stuff. Like the expensive candies in the store that I won't buy because it's it's too expensive. Or I'd buy like a few pairs of Ferragamo shoes that I don't need at all. Or I'd take my girlfriends and I'd be like, let's go to Chanel and do this up in Japan. To just blow all that money. I have no concept of what $1.9 million is. I hardly have a concept of what $190,000 is. I can tell you what I would do with $19,000. Yeah, I can tell you what I do with that. But $1.9 million. And that's how much the federal government, in just this case, and in just the evidence that they're bringing with the charges and the counts against Charissa Tenorio and her 6 co-defendants in the Tenorio corruption case. And the reason I thought about that was because I had just finished this compilation. And if you go to Kandit's website now, and if you've ever been to Kandit's website, you'll see that there's a big box which has the top story, and then there's 4 boxes next to it which are the sub top stories, and then there's the trend, the in chronological order from newest to oldest news. Of course, that's normally how it should go, right? So what I've done is, until the Tenorio corruption case is done, and unless a larger corruption case pops up, that first box, that big box, is going to be the timeline and compilation of the Tenorio corruption case. Let me actually show you what this looks like. It is on our website. Wait, where is that? There we are. Let me just refresh that. So let me show you, send you over to our website. Okay, where's that YouTube thing? There we go. So this is what our website looks like. Okay, so if you type in candidnews.com, the website will do this thing where you'll see the Kandit populate. You just wait a couple seconds, and then, so this is the big box, the very first one that you see here. And to the right of it, you'll see 2 of the 4 boxes. So on this big box, this is going to stay here for as long as the case is ongoing. It's called Timeline and Compilation, the Tenorio Corruption Case. And the reason I did that was because, here, let's go to the page. The reason I did this is because I got tired referencing my own stories going back as I was putting all the stuff together, right? And so I figured if I was tired, and I'm the author of these stories, and if I was tired referencing them and going back and like searching for it and everything, those of you who are reading these stories must be tired as well. So I provide a short synopsis, right, up here in the beginning, but here's where the magic happens, and it's the timeline. It's the chronology, and it starts with the very first story that we ever did related to the Tenorio corruption case. And I was mistaken because I was telling you guys it was probably November or October of last year. It wasn't. It was September 25 of last year. It was the very first story, and I forgot about this, even though I wrote this story. This knowledge of this case publicly broke because of Charlie Hermosa, and I'll get to that in just a second. And I had forgotten about many of these stories that we'd written as well. So after September 25 is a September 30 story, October 4, then a series of stories from September to October 2024. Then we did our first editorial on this on November 23, 2024. More stories all the way until the drug defendant provides testimony. I'm sorry, no, not the drug defendant. It was, what's not here, and among these among the stories on our website is the March 21 interviews with Pat and Tyler. And the reason that they're not here is because I only published that on Facebook, and I was tired and I was lazy, and I didn't transpose that story over to the website. Sorry. That's how my mind operates. And so, all right. So I did that. I put that together. So on our website, if you ever need to refresh yourself about anything, and we have the most expansive coverage on this, and we are going to continue to have the most expansive coverage on this, God willing, and he allows me to live through these days and, do our thing, and I'm able to still type and read and research and go to court cases, and Johnny's able to go to the courthouse and take the notes and all that stuff, then we will have the most expansive coverage on this. And so you are able to very easily just go to our website, www.kanditnews.com. It's the very first story there. And from the beginning, from September 25, 2024, all the way to the latest story, which I published just today, actually. You'll see it there. And so, hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, my brothers and sisters. I love you all. God bless you always for sticking with us here at Kandit. And so when I was looking at that Charlie Hermosa thing, I was like, you know what? That's where it all started. So why don't we just treat each other to watching that interview, that 20-minute interview with Charlie Hermosa, because not only does he talk about, this isn't just where he broke the news that there was this massive federal investigation into PUA fraud involving high levels of the administration. Turned out to be absolutely true. Everything Charlie said about that turned out to be absolutely true. But this is an interview that happened on September 25, 2024, last year. If I'm not mistaken, I conducted this interview inside a restaurant in the Westin so that we would have some privacy. And I was listening to the first half of this interview today, and I was thinking, gosh, these same problems that Charlie is talking about, they're still here. I don't think any of this, like you can hardly tell that this is an interview that's almost 1 year old. So without further ado, here is that interview with Charlie Hermosa, who, by the way, at the time he was a the only announced Republican gubernatorial candidate. I have heard, I have not confirmed this, but I have heard that he's no longer running for governor, but that he might be running for senator as a Republican. And I know that the Adaloop trolls like to say that just because we are covering the story so vociferously against the lieutenant governor, right, that somehow we at Kandit are pushing for the Republicans, and the Republicans will be able to tell you when we were doing coverage so vociferously against them that Kandit's just a bunch of Democrats. Let me just tell you, I really don't care which party does well, which party doesn't do well. Both parties have engaged in corrupt acts, and both parties should be calling this stuff out because corruption belongs nowhere.
Mr. Hermosa, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to do this.
Yeah. So let's just jump straight into this. You are a relative unknown. People don't necessarily know who Charlie Hermosa is. So what is it about your campaign for governor that's going to make you stand out in a way where people are going to recognize your name?
Yeah, and I think that's always it's always a good question. And I've been asked this because For all those who have heard that I am thinking about running for governor and I do want to run for governor, that was the one question they asked, like, what is it going to be different about you? And one of the things that I tell them is that if you look at what's going on with Guam today, if you look at, and one of the reasons why I want to run is because when we see education just falling apart, when you see no infrastructure, when you see crime going up, when you see the drug epidemic, when you see no economic development, we're still having a conversation about poverty. We're still discussing about over 600 kids with no families. I think it was time for me to actually break away from my corporate, lucrative position, as they call it, and really play into what the island really needs today for sort of an impact change.
What is that breakaway? What's that impact change that you want to make?
One of the things that I want to be able to concentrate is it's a leadership perspective that I want to take on. So what does the leadership role really entail? That entails having a vision. That entails being able to make some tough decisions. That entails having accountability for everything that's going to happen throughout the island. And that's one of the things that we're missing right now is accountability for everything that's going on. We're waiting. We don't have a vision. We're trying to make it through one day at a time, 1 year at a time. That's not the focus that we should have. We should have a development plan that takes into account the 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan of how our island's going to look. And it's going to start with education. It's going to start with infrastructure. It's going to start with economic development. It's going to take a lot, but we don't have that vision. And I think that the leadership that I bring into the position is going to take into account that.
What are your thoughts on the current administration's activities, programs, projects involving those things that you just talked about: education, infrastructure, economic development?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. Because if we start breaking each one of them down, a lot of it has been proposals, but there's no action. So what do we do to make some of those things that have been proposed into actionable items? And that is where my experience comes into play. My background in the private sector on making or doing a lot with little. And right now we're looking at a budget of $1.3 billion. $1.3 billion. What do we have to show for 1.3? Now, I wouldn't be saying this if what we saw in the street matched up to 1.3. But do you see buses running? Do you see that infrastructure touching the South? Do you see the education system working well where all the schools are opening on time? Do you see economic development? Do you see poverty going down? So if we're not really touching on these things, it's time to get somebody in there that can actually make these things happen.
Well, so you're a businessman, and arguably the governor is a businesswoman, and the lieutenant governor also had a long stint in the private sector, and you're running for a position that the lieutenant governor wants as well. And so if you guys are cut from the same cloth, so to speak, from the business world, what's going to make you different from the governor, the current governor and lieutenant governor? How are you going to convince our people that you're different from them? Right.
I mean, one of the things that differentiates us is the fact that I'm not a politician. So I haven't had any experience in those type of politics. And if that's the experience that I lack, I don't want it. I don't want the politics that are going on. So the fresh outlook of what we need to be able to be going through right now is the experience that I want to bring to the table. What does that look like? So I'm an educator. So I grind it out with all the teachers and understanding exactly what our students are exposed to. What is their next step in life after they graduate from high school, from college? I'm in there. I ask them. I'm with them. When it comes to business development, I own a small business. I struggle every month to make sure that we're getting payroll, make sure that we're paying rent. The economic development is another huge portion that takes into account. It's a big cycle: education, economic development, and infrastructure. I come from the transportation industry. I analyze this. I look at it and I see that we don't have one. And it divides our island into so many different ways that our people down south are not able to come up to get a good paying job in Tumaini, in Agana, because they don't have transportation. So, those are the things that I want to be able to concentrate on and make sure that we're looking at it.
Aside from the lack of mass transit, what are the other issues that you understand people living under the poverty line in the island are going through?
I mean, right now, if we look at families that are underneath the poverty line, you look at their healthcare, right? You look at the foods that they're able to afford because they don't have enough to buy for. So they buy the essential that they can afford with what they have. That's number one. Running water, infrastructure, being able to have a home where they can actually live safely. And the other aspect of the poverty is being able to create a cycle where we can train them, we can teach them, make them get good paying jobs, or put them back into the workforce, allow them to have an opportunity to prosper just like everybody else. But right now, I don't see that. I don't see those opportunities for our people that are cut off, that are living below the poverty line. They don't have those opportunities.
You know, analysts could argue, or just any spectator of our political system can argue that voter turnout has just been trending downward, perhaps because voters feel a bit gaslit by the politicians. What are your thoughts on that?
I see it. I think this last midterm election, I've been really helping out with, with different campaigns. Obviously, I come from the village of Tenorio, so, I've been really at the heart of trying to see exactly why we have such low turnout. The consensus is that a lot of folks just, like you said, they hear it year after year after year, and nothing happens. They see the same folks running over and over. They see no change. So they're not compelled to actually make their position actually, they don't feel like they count. Like, what is it going to make a difference? And that's the wrong approach. We need everybody to come out and vote, because we can't just have a handful of people to elect our elected officials. Because if not, we're going to have the status quo, and we're seeing it happen right now.
So part of the status quo that those who feel gaslit might be feeling is that corruption never goes away. What are your thoughts on corruption systemically and also corruption within the current administration, and how would you change that?
So corruption has been a huge topic of discussion.
Is it something that you're going to shy from? Because many of your Republican colleagues can't say the C word.
Absolutely not. I'm going to hit it straight on.
How?
And one of the things so I'm a very big process person. So when I look at things that are happening within, and I'm actually looking at some of the budgets that were submitted, pulling them off the website, and I'm trying to go line item, trying to look to see exactly where these monies are going. So when we start looking and dissecting each department, we're going to start seeing exactly what we look at and what we deem as wasted money. Why are we wasting money in this? And then you're going to start to see the trends of corruption. And what do I mean by that? Right? I mean, for those that are utilizing their position in the wrong way to be able to gain for their own purpose, or for their own interests.
So what is your understanding of corruption in the current administration?
So, right now, as we see it, there's been a lot of discussions happening, especially about this ARPA funds or about this PUA funds. And I will tell you that there has been a lot of investigations going on. And I will tell you from sources that I know that there are some things that are coming down the pipeline, which they should, because those monies do not belong to the people that took it. The monies belong to the people that actually needed it. So from what I understand from sources that I know, there are some big items coming down the pipeline as far as corruption being exposed throughout the administration.
Are you talking about federal or local investigations?
Both.
Both. Okay. So, all right. Because the next thing I was going to ask you was, if you were talking about just federal investigations, I was going to ask, what about local investigations? And well, let's just ask it anyway. Do you think more should be done in the way of local investigations into corruption? And how? How would you facilitate that, aside from just the Attorney General?
No, aside from the AG, right? One of the things that we're promoting is transparency. And the other aspect is what office right now has been deemed responsible for the publication of these internal reports, the Public Audit Office. And they get dinged because they're exposing a lot of what's going on internally. And the only thing that they're doing is actually just putting out there how the operations are occurring. So if things are happening in the wrong way, those things are getting exposed in the reports. There's nothing wrong. We need to make sure that we embrace those reports and we fix those things that are happening right now.
How would you protect and further promote the Office of Public Accountability's activities? Anti-corruption activities.
Anti-corruption, I mean, we need to make sure that they have the right funding, number one, and we need to make sure that they have the right staffing, because it takes a long time to make these audit reports, produce these audit reports.
Let's get into a subject that's a little more shaky for Republicans, and that's the subject of police corruption. Your thoughts on police corruption in Guam and what you would do, if anything, to solve this problem.
Right. So I think there's two parts to that, because obviously it's also connected to the rise in crime that we have, because we don't have enough police officers in the street. And unfortunately, if the corruption is bleeding into the current staffing, then it's only going to take away from what's being done out there. So one of the things that we've actually talked about from a platform perspective is, if the current structure is not working, let's look at a different structure to be able to control. One of the things that we have been promoting is the fact that we want to get an elected sheriff, right? How do we bring in the different departments that are providing this type of law enforcement into one sort of umbrella, where we can have one elected sheriff that is elected by the people, and he or she will enforce what's going on internally and externally.
Can we just go back a couple of conversations to the source reports you're hearing of investigations into the current administration? Is there anything more detailed that you're able to say about that?
Well, I think probably as close as to saying that it does have to do with PUA, right? And the mismanagement of that. And the one thing that has come down, and I think it's evident, I think most people know what's going on with this investigation on the island. And the one thing that is clear is that the monies that were mismanaged belong to the people that actually needed it, and they did not get it. And that is one of the things that we need to ensure that we crack down across the board, because every time the government takes 1 penny away from us, that's 1 penny less than we have to be able to spend on food, to be able to spend on our families, to be able to spend on our power. So what we look at the government, like, we should be utilizing the resources of the government. The government should not be utilizing their own resources to make a bigger government.
Need a hand in presenting and sharing your PowerPoint? Hi. I am Isabella, an AI-generated avatar and an excellent presenter that can help you.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Anyway, come back to my pajamas. So that was Charlie Hermosa. Yes, I changed into my pajamas because it is late. That was Charlie Hermosa on September 25, 2024. And everything he said back then came true. And he was the first person to break this news that there was this federal investigation. And I'd completely forgotten about it, even though I wrote that story, even though I did that interview. And so and I'd completely forgotten about all these other stories that we had written since September of last year. And that's the reason why, again, we today completed a timeline and compilation of all the stories since September 25, all the way to the most recent story. We will update this timeline and compilation every single time we publish a story to our website. And let me show you that site again. So all you have to do is go to www.kanditnews.com. And it's going to be the very first story on our site. So here. So just go to kanditnews.com. It's going to populate for a few seconds, bring up the website, and it's the very first story. You'll see this Josh Tenorio waving inside the Dusit next to Matt Tapasnia. Just click anywhere on this box. It's called Timeline and Compilation, the Tenorio Corruption Case, and it brings it up. A short synopsis of the Tenorio Corruption Case before getting into the timeline of all the stories. And there you have it. From September 25, 2024, you see that very first story involving Charlie Hermosa. The interview's in there whenever you want to watch that interview, all the way down to our July 16, 2025 story that was just yesterday of the indictment confirming federal drug defendant's testimony of the nexus to the Tenorio corruption case. This is all of these stories. You got to check these out. Even I was intrigued when I was reading some of these stories that I had written. I was intrigued because I had completely forgotten that we covered all of this stuff. It's because that's how much stuff there is in this story about the largest political corruption case in the history of Guam. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Good night. I love you and God bless you all.
We got that dynamite. We got that dynamite.
Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.